Hey, how's it going? My name is Eugene Ree, and I'll be guiding you through this hopefully short SWT workshop training video. Basically, first of all, welcome to the program. If you've been chosen for the summer term workshop, get ready for a very challenging, tiring, but hopefully rewarding summer. Basically, for those of us who are going to be teaching this SWT program, I'll be just going to be going through a few guidelines and a few extra suggestions regarding administration of the class. For the most part, though, referring to the program guide and manual will be able to get you through the gist of the class. And any kind of particular questions, please address them to your faculty manager and or available resource at your respective branches. When it comes down to this SWT class, basically we found that normally for students, generally when you survey them and ask them what their most challenging sections are on the iBT, usually between listening, speaking, reading, and writing, reading and speaking tend to be the most challenging for various reasons. And now because of that, and because of just the fact that speaking is such a self-conscious, challenging thing for the students because it's not their native language, this class was developed to kind of encourage them and to help them focus and get them as much practice as possible when it comes down to independent thinking. And so because of that, the components will be very, very simple. Independent speaking, independent writing. Us as teachers will basically have to be able to give any kind of response, speaking or writing, any major detail, and of course the developing minor details that will help strengthen those original ideas. And so as our preparation, that's going to be your main task before you come to class, to be able to provide on cue any kind of ideas or suggestions to the students in case they need it. When it comes down to actually administering the class, one thing I do need to remind you about, if you haven't already experienced it, is going to be during the speaking section administration. There are a few things on the real iBT that many teachers and many students don't really focus on too much because obviously we don't run the real iBT. But one thing is basically on the real iBT, the students go to a random school or campus location, they sit down, and eventually they come across the speaking test, which will be the third section on the real iBT. Now, while they do this, they'll be taking notes. Now, the way that the real iBT is geared is that because of the individual break time, which begins after they finish both the reading and listening sections, sometimes the students might be speaking alone if they finish break early, whereas the other students will still be on break, or they might be speaking at the same time with maybe 20 to 25 other Koreans in the same room. Because of this, there is an element of being distracted during the real iBT, and so our job as teachers is to kind of give them that exposure sometimes. Sometimes you might want to ask students a question one-on-one, so that everyone else just listens and gives them feedback. Other times you just might want to, when it comes to administering the in-class test for the speaking section, you might just want to encourage students to speak as loudly as possible and to kind of actually distract each other. That way, the more that they can focus and speak at the same time, the better off they'll be. They'll be able to handle pretty much any real-life situation during the real iBT. So please keep that in mind. The more distractions there are, it actually can be a good thing because it'll force them to kind of have to focus as they speak. When it comes also to speaking administration, when it comes to feedback, many students might be, or they will be, very shy when it comes to giving feedback for their peers. I encourage them that basically this is the best way that they'll learn, as well as for you, how to pick out weaknesses and how to improve from those mistakes as well. The feedback that we give also, please make sure that it's as specific as possible. If you point out why the student's second major detail was underdeveloped, encourage them, ask them questions. For example, how or why it could be developed even more. Those are going to be the two magic questions when it comes to any kind of independent developing. How does the reason relate? how can it be done, or why should it be done, why is this important, things like that. And so in case students are stuck trying to figure out their supporting details, as long as they fall back on how and or why, it should give them at least a little push, trying to think of maybe one or two more reasons for doing that particular major reason. So when it comes down to that, that's pretty much going to be the main stuff when it comes to speaking test section. When it comes to the writing section, it's going to be basically even more challenging because, of course, there's going to be more for you to grade. The good thing is the students will be able to have lots of mind mapping practice as well, either through homework or in class. But when it comes down to essay writing, I've been teaching iBT for about 3 years now, and typically for the independent essays, students have no problem with the conclusion paragraph, little to no problem, or at least it's a problem that can be easily fixed for the introduction paragraph. And for the 3 in-between body paragraphs, the major details are almost always solid. It's always the minor detail developing, the main meat of the paragraphs that tend to be a little bit lacking. And so that's going to be your job, our job as instructors, is to basically help them to strengthen those supporting details. Is there a minimum sentence count, supporting sentence count, all that stuff? Unfortunately, there isn't anything as concrete as that, but basically, you always want to expand on the major detail with a minimum 3 to 4 sentences, but again, depending on the level and depending on how the students are progressing, I would use your judgment on that one, but I would try to expand as much as possible. Basically, my rule of thumb is this: every sentence must be related and it must be new information. Many students, what they do is they rely on simply rephrasing their major detail by just throwing on a simple example of my friend blah 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 blah, and all they really say is my friend did the major detail. And so all they did was give an example of a person who did it, but they didn't give any reasons on why or how this could or should be done, things like that. And so that's something to keep in mind when it comes to justifying and encouraging the students to kind of expand on their development with new and additional information instead of restated information, which unfortunately it will take up the time, it will take up the space, but it won't help their score. Also, when it comes down to grading the independent essays, as well as the speaking, this goes for both sections as well. I would tend to be on the more conservative / stingy side when it comes to grading. The reason is this, because first of all, the real iBT is going to be graded by multiple people, and so it'll be an average of various people's scores. And on top of that, we want to be a little tougher here, but the most important part is if you do give them a lower score without any justification, that won't do any good, that won't help them at all. And so what I want to challenge you with is basically with every score that you give, we should be able to give some kind of tangible feedback on things that could have made this score be higher. Were they missing certain details? Did they restate themselves unnecessarily? Did the reason correlate? Did it even match with the main topic? Did they address both topics instead of choosing one topic? Things like that. And so one thing I do recommend is, here's my independent writing style. What I'll do is, I'll have the checkmark system, and now, again, this is all subjective, and this is all going to be based on if you want to do this system. Basically, when it comes to independent essay, we want to stick with a 5-paragraph style, of course, just to be safe. And when it comes down to each paragraph, what I do is I'll give the introduction paragraph 1 check if it's, of course, providing the main idea, as well as providing the major details that they're going to be talking about. If they don't have the major details, I don't give them credit for it, which is that required? Not necessarily, but I always say better be safe than sorry. And then paragraph 1, I give them 1 check. Paragraph 5, or the conclusion paragraph, of course, you want to give them another check if they, that's right, if they restated their intro in different words, as well as maybe even expand a little bit more without adding any new major information. So these 2 checks are pretty much good to go for most students. The middle 3 paragraphs, each paragraph in my class could receive a maximum of 2 check marks. Now, what do these check marks represent? Paragraph 2, 3, and 4 can each get 2 check marks, as I said. The first one will refer to the major detail, if it's relevant, and if they state it and expand on it. And the second check mark, which is the hardest check mark to receive in my class, is basically, did they support it enough and in a new way, or in an additional way? These are the check marks that are typically the toughest to get in my class. But what this does is it shows the students that, oh, this paragraph number 4, for example, everything else is strong except for paragraph 4's minor detail. Then it'll force them to refocus on that paragraph, especially during feedback time or if they want to take it home and revise it. It'll give them some kind of tangible direction on what they need to focus on and improve in order to raise that score. So again, that's not the required way, but if that's one way, it will be easier for you to visualize for you and for them. That could be one way to do it. But again, the check mark is useless and pointless unless there's a statement or little comment on what actually needs to be done. And so please keep that in mind. Feedback that's tangible and concrete to the students, that's the most important thing they need, especially for something as vague and as broad as the creativity that goes into independent topics, things like that. So please keep that in mind. Besides that though, when it comes to following the rest of the class and conducting the rest of the class, the program guide gives a pretty good detailed breakdown of that. And so that's pretty much all I would like to add or like to give you advice about. Again, if you have any further questions or concerns, please feel free to contact the human resources at your respective buildings. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck for this summer workshop term. Try to have fun with the class, try to be as creative and engaging as possible. And because if not, the class is going to be a very boring lecture, which is kind of like what we're doing right now. So I'm pretty sure they don't want to go through the same thing. So yeah, good luck with that. Wish you the best and take care.